This is episode 99 of The Place of Sound, and I'm your host, Katerina Kalinowska. Today we continue our collaboration with Carleton School of Social Work by featuring a piece from Lauren Moyer, created during her practicum with Dr. Ilyan Ferrer. Her series Autistics Speak centers autistic voices and lived experiences. Over to you, Lauren.
Welcome to the Autistics Speak podcast, where we transcend the narrow pathological perceptions of what it means to be autistic. This is a place for autistics to speak, empower, and advocate for our community. Not just cishet white men who are formally diagnosed, but autistics that are self-diagnosed, non-speaking, queer, and so on. My name is Lauren, and I'm autistic, and with help from other autistics, we will share our culture with you while demanding our right to exist and be accepted. This episode contains discussions of eugenics, ableism, murder, violence, and the Holocaust. My name is Lauren, and I use she/they pronouns, and I am a white gay autistic that is doing this podcast for my social work practicum at Carleton University. Ableism towards autistics is so prevalent in society, from offensive media representations such as Sia's music film to flawed government policies that don't support autistics' needs. I'm going to play for you a short clip from the trailer of Sia's film Music, which I got from the YouTube channel Movie Coverage.
There's, however, a magical little girl, your sister. All she's got now is you.
She can understand everything you are saying to her. And if you are happy, press this one.
I am sad.
Very funny, troublemaker. She sees the world in a completely different way from us.
We're about to have a pool party.
I am happy.
So there's many issues with Sia's film. Firstly, she casted a neurotypical girl to play a non-speaking autistic, and the portrayal is very awful. It's a mockery to autistics. The film is very ableist. Sia herself is ableist, and she ignored the autistic community when creating the film, and instead she listened to autistic hate groups like Autism Speaks. And when the autistic community spoke up about her ableism, she was very disrespectful back and did not hold herself accountable. She also put a deadly restraint scene into the film that was used on the autistic girl while the girl was experiencing a meltdown. There's many other issues with it, and I encourage you to do your own research into it. I want to use my privilege and platform to share space with other autistics, so we can together make the world a safer place for all autistics and everyone else that experiences oppression, because all oppression is connected. In this episode, I'll be talking about the history of autism, which I believe is important since there is a lot to learn from the historical views of autism. And unfortunately, many of these views have created the current issues that I'll also be talking about in this episode. I want to share my own experience growing up autistic with you. My whole life, people described me as being very shy because I did not speak a lot as a child. I often didn't interact with a lot of people unless I knew them very well, and I liked them and felt safe around them, which meant that I didn't have a relationship with most of my family members. I only really talked to my mom, my brother, and my 2 grandparents. I barely spoke to teachers, other children, and strangers. I had a lot of behavioral issues, and I struggled to learn in school. I also had many sensory sensitivities, such as being very sensitive to light, and I was a very picky eater, and I had a lot of fear around food. I was also very stubborn and had a lot of difficulty with change in routine. For reasons such as executive functioning and sensory sensitivities, I struggled with good hygiene like brushing my teeth, showering, and brushing my hair. I remember in grade 5, I became very hyperfixated on Hannah Montana, and I actually ended up becoming her for a school speech. I sang and talked a lot during it, and people were so shocked to hear me speaking that they made jokes about me being a completely different person. A lot of these things were viewed as resulting from early childhood trauma, since many autistic traits can on the surface appear as trauma. It was also just brushed off as me being very shy and weird. So when I got older, I was able to start fitting into society a lot more, but it definitely compromised my own physical and mental health. And because I didn't know I was autistic, I didn't have the language to express what was going on with me, when something like sensory overload occurred, which really affected my relationships. And because I had so much shame that had been built up from an entire life of not being able to be my authentic self safely, I didn't like myself very much. So finally, when I started learning more about what it's like to be autistic, I immediately resonated with it, which was around the age of 22. And at age 23, I got diagnosed. And ever since then, I've been on the journey of unlearning internalized ableism, which I still have a lot of. And I'm learning who my authentic self is while working really hard on trying to get my needs met. Finding out I was autistic helped me release a lot of shame, and finding community was also extremely empowering and healing. I love being autistic, but I hate the ableism that comes along with it, as well as the sensory overload. But I definitely wouldn't change it, and I'm very thankful that I get to experience the vibrancy and the passion that makes up autistic culture. I'm also very grateful that I get to witness autistic joy in other autistics because it's so beautiful, and I really hope that if the world becomes safer for all autistics, that everyone will be able to witness it more. Now I'm going to jump into the historical narratives of autism. Looking at history can teach us a lot about how we became the society we are today. A lot of the beliefs about autistic people in the past are actually still influencing how we are heard today. Before I begin, I want to mention that the historical views about autistics are not correct, and their ignorance caused a lot of violence. It's also very important to question everything. Just because a person with high status says something doesn't make it true or ethical. And this is also just how autistics are viewed in a colonial society. This is something I'm going to be discussing in further detail another time. I also want to give a definition to the term autistic, since I'll be using this term frequently throughout the podcast, and simply it's someone who isn't autistic. So if you aren't autistic, then you are autistic. Looking at historical ableism can help us understand how society is ableist today, so we can challenge that current ableism. So now let's get into it. In the book Authoring Autism by Melanie Yergo, I learned that in 1911, a psychiatrist named Eugene Bleuer coined the term autistic and referred to it as a subtype of schizophrenia. He described children with it as socially withdrawn and detached from reality. In a Spectrum News article titled How History Forgot the Woman Who Defined Autism by Lena Zeldovich, it is stated that in the 1920s, a doctor named Grania Afimovna Sukhareva started publishing papers on autism that are considered very similar to the DSM-5 description used today. I'm going to describe the DSM-5 description in another episode, but essentially autistics are viewed as having difficulty socializing and have restrictive and repetitive patterns of behavior and interests. So during the 1950s, Sukhareva started working to separate autism from its so-called connection to schizophrenia. She challenged a lot of false narratives surrounding autism, such as the narrative that it's caused by mothers being uncaring towards their children. There were Jewish doctors in Vienna named Frankl and Weiss that around the same time started making similar observations about autistics. I mentioned Frankl and Weiss being Jewish because shortly after the Holocaust started and impacted the research they were doing in Vienna. A doctor named Hans Asperger started working with Frankl in 1932, but then when World War II started, Weiss and Frankl made their way to America, where they continued their work. This happened because the Nazis were trying to get rid of Jewish doctors. So Hans Asperger got to take over since he wasn't Jewish. In America during World War II, Frankl worked with another doctor named Kanner, where more papers on autism were published and the term autism entered into American psychiatric vocabulary, but with Kanner getting the credit. Kanner described autism as a disturbance of affective contact, meaning for sameness, aloneness, and repetition. Hans Asperger also published papers while in Vienna, but he referred to it as something that disturbs one's human experience. This is a drastically different definition, and with Hans Asperger's privilege he had during Nazi Vienna, this did not help autistics living there, because given the political climate of World War II, eugenics was very much alive. Eugenics can be defined as the belief that humans can be improved by breeding specific populations, and anyone deemed inferior is killed off. During World War II, the Holocaust was occurring, and Jewish people were being killed, as well as other groups like queer people and disabled people. Hans Asperger, whose last name might sound familiar to you, is because his last name used to be a diagnosis called Asperger's, but currently is no longer a diagnosis. Unfortunately, Hans Asperger was a Nazi and used his diagnostic criteria to determine which autistic people should be sent away, which meant where they would be killed, and which ones could end up surviving. Hans Asperger would send children to Am Spiegelgrund, which was led by the leading figure of the Nazi euthanasia program. In an article by the British Psychological Society titled The Aftermath of the Hans Asperger Exposé, it was stated that an estimated 800 children died there between 1940 to 1945. Many were poisoned and drugged. It doesn't specify how many of those children are autistic, but Hans Asperger would send children there that he deemed to be burdens, semi-imbeciles, and psychopathic infants. 2 of these children were named Herta Schreiber and Elizabeth Schreiber. He also sent children from the Gugging Psychiatric Hospital to Spiegelgrund that were labeled non-educable. 41 children were sent there and died. He constantly referred to patients being Jewish, which put them at higher risk for being killed, and in Asperger's patient reports, he did not withhold sharing information about the impairments of some patients labeled with autistic psychopathy that he deemed unable to assimilate. Other patients that would be described as needing less support needs could have the same diagnosis, but with a focus on their strengths too. Essentially, his harmful labeling made it more likely for the children that were deemed unable to assimilate to be killed. And those that Asperger thought could become useful members of society would have to first be cured. This idea of a cure was therapy that Asperger and his colleagues endorsed. It's a very good thing that the diagnosis Asperger's got dropped from the DSM-5 because it is being named after a Nazi and is being associated with eugenics. Autistics that would have been diagnosed as having Asperger's in the past are just as autistic, so it's really wrong and horrible that some autistics were killed for being seen as too autistic to have value. And unfortunately, this belief about many autistics lacking value is still prevalent today, which is why being aware of our history is crucial to making changes for a safer world. I'm now going to talk about the present day view of autistics, and this view is coming from people that aren't autistic. So although there has been a shift scientifically on how autistics are viewed, autistics are now not viewed by some scientists as being mentally ill and able to be cured, but there still is a lot of stigma that exists, such as beliefs that autism is a bad thing. And before I begin, I want to clarify that I will be referring to autism for the next little while instead of saying autistic people, and this is because this is a language used by the people that hold these beliefs. Many people are still working on finding a cure, such as major organizations like Autism Speaks. Autism Speaks is a well-known organization that focuses on autism research and supports families with autistic children. It's considered the most well-liked nonprofit brand in Canada, although within the autistic community they are highly disliked. You might recognize them as the organization that is associated with the blue puzzle piece to represent autism, but many autistics reject the puzzle piece logo because it is rooted in the belief that autistic people are incomplete and a missing puzzle piece. So although many allistics support Autism Speaks, the autistic community finds them to be extremely ableist. I'm now going to play an advertisement that Autism Speaks made in 2009 titled I Am Autism, so you can get a better understanding of how they view autism, or actually autistic people, but in their eyes it's autism.
I am autism. I'm visible in your children, but if I can help it, I am invisible to you until it's too late. I work faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined. And if you are happily married, I will make sure that your marriage fails.
Autism Speaks is using disgusting scare tactics to further push the narrative that autism will destroy a family, destroy the community, and be a burden to the parents and anyone else that autistic child interacts with. And that's so ableist.
Autism You forget the spirit of mothers and daughters and fathers and sons.
We are coming together in all climates.
We call on all faiths. We search with technology
And voodoo.
prayer and
Herbs, genetic studies.
autism. If you are not scared, you should be.
So if you notice, this ad only has non-autistic people talking about autism, and it's family members who are talking about their autistic children. And this is often the case. The autistic community is ignored while the parents of autistic children use their power to spread their ableist agenda. This ad only came out in 2009 too, which really wasn't a long time ago. In 2008, Autism Speak's co-founder Suzanne Wright said this: "We're now playing catch-up as we try to stem the tide and ultimately eradicate autism for the sake of future generations. If we continue our trajectory, we'll get there in my lifetime." Autism Speaks views autistic people as not autistic people, but rather autism. The autism is viewed as something that destroys the good and needs to be cured. They have compared childhood, I say that in quotations as autism is viewed as a childhood disorder, but they have compared childhood autism to fatal car crashes, as well as saying more kids are being diagnosed with it than AIDS, diabetes, and cancer combined, which is wrong in so many ways and further stigmatizes those disorders. Another quote from the late founder Suzanne Wright of Autism Speaks makes it sound like autistic children are not really alive, and their lack of humanness makes their families unalive too. She quoted, "These families are not living, they are existing. Breathing, yes. Eating, yes. Sleeping, maybe. Working, most definitely, 24/7. This is autism." And just to be clear, this is not just Autism Speaks that has these narratives about autistic people, but actually most autism organizations think this way about autistics. If you type autism into Google, the majority of search results will talk about treatments used to reduce symptoms, while stating that there's not yet a known cure. There are so many treatments that attempt to treat autistics, such as applied behavior analysis, which is a therapy used to assimilate autistics into a holistic culture, and I'm going to talk about this in another episode. Also, pseudoscience like chlorine dioxide, orthomolecular medicine, and heavy metals therapy are also used to try to take the autism out of an autistic person. Many people believe that autism is caused by vaccines, viruses, gluten, allergies, inflammation, parasites, and so much more. Many of these people are parents of autistic kids and so badly want to find a cure for their children since they feel burdened. There have been many cases of parents harming their child in hopes of finding a cure through methods such as giving them chlorine dioxide. And just to be clear, there is no cure for us. We don't need a cure or want a cure. It is impossible to take the autistic out of us because it makes us who we are as a person, from our personality to our interests to our communication styles and our way of perceiving the world. Have any of you heard of the March 1st holiday? It's called the Day of Mourning and occurs every year on March 1st. ASON, which is Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, as well as other disability rights organizations, use this holiday to bring awareness to all the disabled people that have been murdered by family members and caregivers, and remember the victims that died. There have been so many cases where parents have murdered their autistic children, and instead of public outrage, there's sympathy towards them for being burdened. I'm going to name some Canadian autistics that have been murdered. Lydia Whitford, age 18. Robert Robinson, age 16. Tony Kaur, age 15. Jeremy Bostick, age 11. Tiffany Pinkney, age 23. Scarlett Chen, age 4. Johnny Churchy, age 13. And Charles Antoine Blaze, age 6. This is so incredibly sad and wrong, and this is one reason why autistic advocacy and acceptance are both so important. Now I'm going to jump into the diversity of autism. So autistics are also usually seen as being only white, cisgender boys and men, and heterosexual, or sometimes even asexual due to the infantilization and disabled people not being seen as sexual beings. But that's not to deny that there are asexual autistics. But autistics are actually a very diverse community, with white cishet men typically getting represented in media, whether they are autistic or not. This can explain one reason for why most people think autistics are white cishet boys and men. I'm going to play some scenes for you that are from shows that have autistic characters, but they're white cishet men. The first scene is from Atypical, and I got it from the YouTube channel Ask Zach.
I'm a weirdo. That's what everyone says. Sometimes I don't know what people mean when they say things, and that can make me feel alone even when there are other people in the room. And all I can do is sit and twiddle, which is what I call my self-stimulatory behavior, when I flick a pencil against a rubber band at a certain frequency and think about all the things that I could never do, like research penguins in Antarctica or have a girlfriend.
The next clip is from the movie Rain Man, and a lot of people think of autistic people as this character.
Fellow's name's yes, then who's playing first? Yes. I mean the fellow's name on first base. Who? The fellow playing first base for St. Louis. Who? What are you asking me for?
What is this? Why is he doing that?
Who's on first?
Whenever he gets nervous, he does who's on first. You know, from Abbott and Costello?
Yeah, why?
Why? It's his way of dealing with you touching things. His books and stuff.
First.
So he memorized who's on first.
Yeah, that among other things.
This last clip is from the show The Good Doctor.
Don't let me interrupt you.
You already have. And since you won't be invited to my wedding, you don't get a vote or cake.
You have an interesting affect. Are you on the autism spectrum?
Autistic representation is starting to diversify. The new Netflix show Heartbreak High has a queer autistic girl as one of the main characters. The character is also played by a real-life autistic named Chloe Hayden. I find myself really relating to the character, but she is white, so there is still a desperate need for more diversity in autistic representation in media. This is also a reminder that you are listening to CKCU 93.1 FM, which is your place for alternative radio. Another reason for autistic people being seen as only white and cishet boys and men are because there are many barriers that prevent people of color from getting diagnosed. And I'll discuss this in further episodes, but in a 2017 study, the study being titled Autism Spectrum Disorder Among U.S. Children, Socioeconomic, Racial, and Ethnic Disparities, from the American Journal of Public Health. The research showed that over an 8-year span in various states, 55.8% of children diagnosed were white. A large percentage of autistics identify as queer, with a lot being trans and non-binary. I'm going to talk about theory of mind now because there's also the belief that autistics lack theory of mind, which is a term coined by Premack and Woodruff in 1978, and it's about a person being able to know that other people have their own unique mental states, feelings, beliefs, and desires. It's also the ability to be aware of one's own mind. Simon Baron-Cohen, who's associated with the theory of mind, coined a term called mind blindness and labeled autistic people with it, which is a very ableist way of claiming that autistics lack theory of mind. And I actually remember reading about this in my psychology textbooks for school, and I found it very questionable. I found a peer-reviewed article by Melanie Yergo and Morten Gernsbacher, who also say that it is empirically questionable and also harmful to the autistic community. Baron-Cohen argued that all autistics lack theory of mind, but Yergo and Gernsbacher state that not all autistics do. They also bring up how the theory of mind tasks rely on complex language, and that because some autistics may have communication impairments, this could be why some fail the tasks. Also mentioned by them was that the theory of mind studies have small sample sizes and lack of replication, which can affect validity of results. They claim the research lacked validity and also said that many researchers don't even know how to measure theory of mind properly. The article finished off by saying that the rhetoric about autistics lacking theory of mind is harmful because, in quotes, it disputes autistic people's autonomy, devalues their self-determination, and discredits their credibility. I completely agree with this, and when autistics' voices are silenced and not taken seriously by holistics so commonly already, the theory of mind harm only adds to that. Now I'm going to talk about how I describe autistic people. Autistic people are people that have different brains compared to holistic people. It's not good or bad, just different, and has pros and cons to it, just like holistics too. There are so many amazing things that come with being autistic, and there are many challenges too. Everyone has their own strengths and unique needs that should be met. Some quotes from other autistics from the book Loud Hands, Autistic People Speaking are, one of them is from Lydia Brown, saying, "Respect starts by understanding that we are full and complete human beings with individual personalities, life experiences, goals, and preferences. We deserve an education, access to communication, and a place in society as we become adults. We deserve to live without fear of being abused, manipulated, or hurt. We are not less than." Paula C. Durbin Westby says, "Think of autism as a disability and a difference, not a depersonalized disorder. When a person has a disability, that person is still a human being. That person with a disability has a body, a mind, interests, dreams, and goals, even if you can't discern them. Only people have rights under the Developmental Disabilities Act and other protective legislation. A disorder can be combated, cured, prevented, and eradicated in any manner, including questionable goals, treatments, or interventions that researchers and others see fit. A person with a disability has the right to be who they are and to be accepted for who they are, without the need for a fix or a cure." Now I'm going to share some important information for you to know. Let's talk about language. There is a lot of discussion on whether to use person-first language, which would be person with autism, or identity first, which is autistic person. The majority of the autistic community wants identity-first language use, so saying autistic person. This is because us being autistic makes up everything we are. You can't separate the autism from us. Think about how you would describe a gay person or a white person. You wouldn't say person with gayness or a person with whiteness. Also, decolonize your language, because Indigenous languages often don't have words for disability, so instead everyone is seen as having inherent value without minimizing the challenges that can be present for some people. So always listen to how autistics identify, because not everyone may use identity-first language. Functioning labels are also something I want to talk about, because high functioning and low functioning are derogatory and inaccurate. And because support needs change all the time, which is another reason why functioning labels are inaccurate, we need to stop using them. We've made it to the end of the episode, so I'm going to share some key takeaways. The past and present mainstream information on autistics is oppressive. The autistic experience doesn't look one way. There is diversity, and there is a lot that needs to be done to keep the autistic community safe. Look in the show notes to find some self-care tips, some advocacy tips, and amazing autistics to follow on social media. Thanks for listening to my first episode that was an introduction to autism. My next episode is going to be all about the DSM and diagnosis. I'm also going to have my first guest, so stay tuned for that, and practice self-care.
Thank you to Lauren for sharing her work with us today. If you'd like to hear the rest of her series, you can find the link on our website. See you next time on The Place of Sound for the third and final part of our collaboration with the School of Social Work. Bye now.